The next step in your engine assembly is to install the carburetor and the air filter assembly. The first step is to install the spacer block on the studs that hold the carburetor onto the engine. And before you install your carburetor, you want to make sure that you have it turned the correct way. The side with the choke lever should always face away from the engine. So I'm going to install the carburetor onto the studs with the choke facing out. Be careful of your governor linkage. After your carburetor is installed, you want to hook up your governor linkage onto the governor rod sticking out of the top of the engine block. Once your linkage is in place and you've installed your nut, you can hook the governor spring up. The long end of the spring attaches to the throttle, and the short end of the spring that's in my fingers will be installed in the last hole of the linkage. Your final assembly should look like this. Now that everything is hooked up, my next step is to tighten this nut up. Double check the pictures that you took before disassembly to make sure that the spring is hooked up the same way it was when you took it off. My next step is to install the air cleaner assembly, and I want to make sure that the two brass spacers are in this plastic housing, and I'm just going to slip those brass spacers over the carburetor studs. I also want to install the breather hose inside the valve cover. After I've installed this part of the air filter assembly, I want to install this before I put the nuts back on. Be sure to orientate this piece so it looks just like this when you install it. After that piece is in place, I can take my two nuts and tighten them up to hold the carburetor to the engine block. This nut is the easiest to install using your 10mm socket, your adapter, and your extension. According to my torque specifications sheet, I want to tighten up my carburetor mating studs between 71 and 106 inch-pounds. After I've set my torque wrench, I'm going to use my 10mm socket, my adapter, and my extension to tighten those two nuts up. Tighten the nuts until the torque wrench clicks. My next step is to install the air filter, and you want to make sure that the pink or orange side of the air filter goes in first. After that is in place, I can install the outside cover. Be sure your cover is not upside down. You want to make sure that the lettering is readable. Be careful not to strip out these plastic bolts. They can be easily stripped as they only thread into a plastic nut on the inside of the air filter assembly. My next step is to install the muffler, and this will be completed in the next video.